go ahead and crank it up there fast. What we're doing, we're just going to go ahead and raise the front of the end of the truck up. That way we can get underneath there and get to those transmission mounts, bolts that we're getting ready to get to. Alright, so what we're doing now, we're just taking loose those them bolts there. It's the slotted bolt holes for the, as you can see how much room you got. I don't know if you guys can see that or not on this camera, but right there's the bolt. You've got this slot coming up in here. What we're going to do, we're going to slide this transmission. Looks like we'll probably get about a 3/4 of an inch slide on that transmission. That will help out. We got one more to do. So Ethan, he's down there trying to loosen this thing up, and he's like, man, this one here is really tight. And I said, well, you got to put some muscle into it. And then I tried it, and he was going the wrong way.
Alright, so what we did is we moved the transmission 1 inch farther away from the bell housing, which that'll give us more room. And then to do that, we had to take this front drive shaft off right there. And so we took a rubber mallet and we had to hit that yoke farther back in there so we were able to take it off. And once we did that, it slid in there just fine.
And then by doing that, it looks like we've moved it almost 2 inches away from the firewall, but only by sliding it an inch, it sure has given us a lot more room up around the firewall, plus also beating that little flange in. That's really going to help things out, kind of get this engine and transmission bolt together, and also just gives you a little bit more wiggle room to make some corrections. Alright, so we went ahead and rebolted the engine to the transmission. As you can see, we've got plenty of room around that bell housing, especially since we've taken out that little flange and bent that flange up. The transmission dipstick's going to have plenty of room once we get it bolted in place. And now we're going to be looking at the motor mounts. So basically, I am going to try to use the center bolt holes for the motor mounts instead of the ones that sit just below the outlet to the radiator hose, those three. And I'm going to try to bring it back in this area, but we're going to have to put the exhaust manifold and turbo on to kind of really see where everything's sitting. So it is sitting just to the left a little bit, and get down in there. Also there, just below the fuel pump, you got your four holes. That's in there. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4. That's going to be also your mounting plate for this side. And as you can see, we don't have a lot of room, but what I'm going to have to do is build off of the existing motor mount platform, probably going to be coming out in this area, and then actually welding on a plate and then some brackets, and then bringing out and then having that motor mount sit just to the back side of the existing motor mount. And we will see how that looks. So anyhow, we're moving on. Alright, so this is the passenger side motor mount that is just basically just been mocked up. We've pretty much got it all done on this side. We haven't did the final tightening of the bolts on these here, and also one underneath here. What I did was I took the original motor mount that was on this truck and took it off. Basically, this right here was bolted in just like this. Took it off. I did put it's a 1/4 inch steel plate with a 2 inch by 2 inch angle iron, and that's 3/8 inch thick. This here's the fluid filled motor mount. I believe these are actually, I got these off of a Napa. And I think they're off of a Trailblazer. The plate that actually gets bolted to the engine is a 1/4 inch steel plate. This right here is a channel. It's 5 inches wide. by 1/4 inches thick. This here worked out really well on this side. A couple factors that you need to take in consideration on the driver's or the passenger side is the starter. So put your starter in there before you start getting this all hooked up. Just pretend that you're taking the starter in and out, making sure you got plenty of clearance down here on this angle iron that runs out this way, and we've got plenty of clearance. And as you can see, that motor mount on this side sits just forward of the center of that steel plate, and that's going to give you plenty of clearance. And I say plenty of clearance, but we're probably looking at maybe 1/4 of an inch, 3/16 of an inch clearance for your starter to have clearance to get out, and then you can actually take your starter out, drop it to the bottom, and or bring it up to the top. Now once you put your turbo and exhaust on, that's going to go away, but you do have plenty of clearance to go on the bottom. Now a couple factors that you need to take in consideration before you get started is, number one is the angle of your engine. If you want that angle just right, I've got basically, it's an angle indicator that sits on the valve cover, and we're sitting at 0. That's probably one of the first factors that you want to take in consideration prior to making your motor mount. And also down here, make sure you got plenty of clearance in between here and also on the back side back there as well. I still have to do a little bit of a shaving on that one differential notch at 6 up. If I get the light in here, right back there, we're going to take that little knob off, and then also probably change out those 2 bolts, maybe just that back bolt head there with a like maybe a Torx head or something to give us a little bit more clearance. Also, basically I've got some wood blocks sitting underneath the oil pan. That kind of got me right where I needed to be, and then I put the weight down from the winch that I have here, ensure that everything's kind of stayed stationary. Here's the steel plate. This plate right here is 1/4 inch steel plate. I've already got some holes drilled. This basically, I took the old motor mount that come off, laid it here, and drilled it out. Then that way I've got these right here, bolts. This plate right here is going to bolt on right down there where that old motor mount used to be. And let me give you some measurements here so you'll have this for your reference. Reference is, it's about 5 3/4 inches long by 5 inches wide, 1/4 inch thick. This steel plate here is going to be the one that actually gets bolted to the engine block. I've got that 7 inches by 5 inches, 1/4 inch steel plate. There's going to be 4 holes here, and that gets bolted directly to the passenger side. Here we have our 2-inch angle iron, and this piece right here is right at 10 inches on that. I've left this one just a little long because I'm going to probably make a little bit of adjustment on this side, but that is 3/8 inch thick, 2 inch by 2 inch. This here's the channel that goes on the very top of that mount, which is right here. This is, it's 5 inches wide channel. If you guys see my other video, I've got the Jeepster Commando on here. This is actually the bumper that come off the back of that thing. So I've had this around for several years now. I get to use it up. Now one thing to keep in mind is I've had to buy some steel brand new. Most of the steel, I was able to go to a scrap yard, a recycling place. They have all kinds of steel. They've got these pieces here, they've got channel, they got flat steel, they got round tubing, they got everything. And you just buy by the pound. So if you've got a recycler near you, you might be able to save quite a bit of money in doing that. So we're just mocking this up. This side's done, and we're going to get the other side done today. And then what we're going to do is take the winch completely off and go ahead and put pressure on these mounts and see how much space that these are going to collapse. I'm guessing, I don't know, maybe 1/4 of an inch to 3/8 of an inch, my guess, once all the pressure is down on these mounts. Now the good thing is if you can see these studs on these mounts have a lot of thread on there, and the bottom is the same way. And what that's going to allow you to do is, if we put this motor down on these mounts and it compresses 3/8 of an inch, well, I need it back up, because if it's going to compress that much, it's probably going to get into the differential a little bit. But all we have to do is put some spacers down here or right in here, and then we can reset it. We could probably easily raise this engine about 3/4 of an inch, no issues whatsoever, just by putting some washers in there. And it's got plenty of threads, and we'll just tighten it on down. So I guess we'll get started making the passenger side. And I had some other ideas, but I think this here is going to work out a lot better. It's just going to be a lot easier, I think. So we're going to get started and see what happens. One thing I'm going to add on this is, if you can see in here, this is that channel on this side right there. If you can see that bolt in there, that is actually that bolt's been welded in there. And on your motor mount, you're going to have 3 bolts, and since you have to cut off that little excess little flange up there, you have to move a bolt hole up where this one is. And what I did was I just went ahead and welded that bolt in there. That way I wouldn't have to worry about putting a wrench on there. And all we do is take the nut off the bottom, and then that whole and then those 2 nuts off those 2 bolts, and that whole motor mount, basically you can disconnect it and remove it from the truck. So just a thought. So what I did here was I just went ahead and took this plate off. That's the plate that gets bolted to the block. Take that off, and then this is what it looks like. I've got that all bolted in place here, and that's what that looks like. Alright, so here's the driver's side motor mount that I've started. What we've got here is we've got our 1/4 inch steel plate that gets bolted to the engine. That's there. We've got our channel that's getting ready to get welded on here. And what we're going to do, the way I've got that is take it all the way up to the top side, and we're going to bring it all the way over to that side, and we're going to weld it up. And what that allows is you got plenty of room to get your bolts. You got plenty of strength with that 1/4 inch 5-inch channel, and basically that motor mount's going to sit right up in here, and that bolt's going to go through about right here. So you got plenty of room. If the engine moves, you don't have to worry about this getting into the sides of that liquid-filled motor mount, and it should be good to go. Okay, so this week finally got the motor mounts done for this 4BT. This right here is basically this would be the passenger side. You've got the 3 bolt holes here. This one here is what I had to add in. These are the 2 from the existing motor mount holes that bolt into the engine or to the frame. There would be another one down here, but we had to cut that off to get that a little bit wider in there. So basically this is your mount here. When this sits on the engine, this piece right here is basically level. So it sits basically level just like that. Inside there is where I welded that bolt in place. That way I don't have to worry about trying to stick a wrench in there. And it sits right in there just like that. Let me lay this right here so you can see it a little bit better. Anyhow, when this is bolted in, this right here, like I said, is level. That way this motor mount here is directly vertical. And then this is This is the mounting plate that goes on the engine itself. It sits in there just like that. You've got plenty of clearance in between. Basically, that's how it's sitting, just like that. You've got plenty of clearance from side to side, and also your bolt holes down there. This one here is a little touchy. I had to waller that out just a tad bit because my measurement was off. But this here is the size of bolt that we stick in there, but gonna have to go a little bit shorter on this one just because of clearance, trying to get it around that rubber mount. This here is the driver's side. Basically, once again, when this gets bolted in here, that motor mount is directly straight up and down. Same deal, welded in a bolt to the back side of that. If I can get it to stay up here, probably can't. And then basically what you've got here, this is the other one. This is the other mounting plate that goes on the passenger or driver's side of the engine, and it gets bolted in there just like that. And it looks just like this on the driver's side. This little piece right here is pretty heavy. We shouldn't have to worry about anything bending on it. Should have plenty of strength. And next thing we'll do is we'll get this bolted in, and I'll show you guys what it looks like sitting in the engine. Okay, so I've got the motor mounts in. Hopefully you can see them there. Got that one in. Everything's looking good. I got plenty of clearance on everything. Sit really nice. Back down in there, you've got a couple of your differential bolts. I got about 3/8 of an inch clearance between the oil pan and that bolt. And here's another clearance issue you have to worry about on this is on the passenger side. That clearance right there, you want to make sure you got plenty of clearance there. And then this is the passenger side motor mount. Everything's bolted in place. Got plenty of clearance for the starter. If you can see that little yellow mark on that fin right there, that's a clearance issue that you need to be aware of. And I got about 1/4 of an inch clearance in between that. Now, to open that up a little bit, you probably take a little file and just take that back about another 3/16 of an inch, and it'll give you plenty of clearance. Alright, so I've got all the weight is on the truck. That's all loose, and I just want to try to shake this motor around for you guys. I mean, this thing barely moves. I mean, you got to really crank on it. So those fluid-filled motor mounts are working extremely well. I mean, it'll move just a little bit, but boy, that's going to be really nice. So I thought you guys would like to see that. Alright, so we've got the dial indicator sitting on the engine now, and it's sitting right at a 5-degree angle. That's what the engine's sitting at right now. And that's with raising the back of the transmission up 1 inch. So this is about as good of a clearance as you can get without the top of the transmission getting into the bottom of the cab. And it gives a little bit of room, and also getting enough clearance down around your oil pan so it doesn't hit your differential. So that's just a reference. Here's the Napa number 642-2267, and that's on the fluid-filled motor mount.